here our journey begins at Joseph Scriven's grave with a beautiful view of Rice Lake. So let's start our journey and uncover the story behind this man. Today we're embarking on a journey into the lives of two remarkable yet contrasting figures from Ontario's past. Joseph Scriven, the humble hymn writer of What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and his foster son, David Kidd-Byrne, whose life spiraled into a tale of faith and fraud. We'll visit Scriven's grave and the memorials Kidd-Byrne built, diving deep into their stories with details from historical booklets and biography. So grab a drink and let's dive in and see what we can uncover. We're at Pengelley Family Cemetery, just off Scriven Road near Rice Lake, where Joseph Scriven was laid to rest August 13th, 1886, at the age of 66. Born September 10th, 1819 in Ireland to Captain John Scriven of the Royal Marines and his wife Jane Medlicott. Scriven came from a Protestant family. His father served in the War of 1812 in Canada, where he lost an eye and his health was said to be impaired. He had 5 siblings: William, George, John, Catherine, and Jane, and it's said that his grandfather, William Scriven, died in Quebec way back in 1782. He was educated at the Trinity College in Dublin, and he apparently aimed for a military career, but he had to resign due to health that was said to be unfit for the tropics, and that of course disappointed his father. He was only 24 when tragedy struck. In 1843, his fiancée drowned in full view of him on the eve of their wedding day, and it's said that he never smiled after that. This drove him to Canada in 1845, but after 2 short months here in Canada, he became ill and returned home. But he would later return in 1847. He tutored the Pengelley family near Rice Lake from 1850 and moved to Port Hope by 1857 and wrote What a Friend We Have in Jesus around 1855 at his friend James Sackville's home to comfort his ill mother. But it was here that Joseph met Miss Pengelley's niece, Eliza Catherine Roche. The pair became deeply attached, and they were to be married, so a baptism was called for and to be done in Rice Lake. But that was when the second water tragedy occurred. The icy waters of Rice Lake in April proved to be fatal. Catherine developed pneumonia and suffered for 4 months before finally succumbing to her illness. It's said that Joseph and Catherine here are buried feet to feet, so when they would rise from the grave, they would once again face each other. Scriven was said to always be giving to the community and those in need. In one story, he gave his coat that was given to him by his mother to a beggar, literally giving the clothes off his back, embodying his faith. Scriven would also help saw and cut wood for widows and sick people, and he would never do it for money. He would often be seen at the bedside of the sick and dying. In 1876, on a cold January night, he saved a young boy named David Kidd from freezing to death. David would end up becoming his foster son and would later go on to have quite the life, and we'll learn more about him later. Although, unfortunately, that didn't stop certain people from disliking him. Once he was preaching on a street corner downtown Port Hope where it said he was beat up so badly he was found lying prone on the ground for 2 hours in a gutter beside a saloon. His friend, James Sackville, took him home and helped him tend to his wounds. Another time, while preaching in Port Hope, he was pelted with mud, though it said he knelt down and prayed, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." He was even arrested on August 4th, 1873 for preaching on the street, though despite the arrest, he was quickly released due to public support. On August 10th, 1886, delirious from fever at Sackville's house, it said that Scriven's greatest fear was that he would do something to dishonor God. Sackville said he heard him repeating 2 scriptures the last hour he was with him. "I am the Lord, and I will never leave nor forsake thee." Though in the morning, when Sackville went to check on him, he found the room empty. Then, a little after noon, the body was discovered in a waterway nearby, lifeless and cold in death. The coroner was notified, but he did not think it necessary to hold an inquest because Scriven had not an enemy in the world. So, there's a bit of a mystery with his death. Joseph Scriven, who is said to have been too ill to rise from his bed by himself, seemed to have done so. Rumors of suicide or murder by his foster son swirl, but we'll talk about that later. For now, let's honor his selfless spirit.
What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer.
We're here in Memorial Park, Port Hope, at a stone originally placed by David Kidd-Byrne in 1919 at the corner of Ontario and Hope Street. It was relocated here after a 1941 car accident. This memorial, one of the first funded by Kidd-Byrne, is a polished stone honoring Scriven's hymn and life. Inscribed with lyrics and details of his legacy, it stands as a quiet tribute in this park, drawing visitors to reflect on Scriven's life. David Kidd-Byrne's life began humbly in Bewdley, born July 28, 1868, in a one-room log cabin with 9 other siblings. His father, George, was said to be a struggling laborer and was often intoxicated. And on a freezing night in 1875, George shoved the 7-year-old David out for firewood. Lost in a snowstorm, David collapsed in a drift. Near death, Scriven, traveling by horse sleigh, spotted him, wrapped him up in a buffalo robe, and nursed his frostbitten leg all night, saving it from amputation, but leaving a lifelong limp. Scriven fostered him, teaching him and guiding him to faith, becoming his spiritual father. After Scriven's death, Kidd-Byrne's path diverged. He claimed to attend the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, emerging as a self-styled evangelist, preaching with an orchestra, including Mr. White on violin for 3 years in the 1920s. We know he had his nomadic ministry that toured across Toronto, Chicago, New York, Montreal, and Florida. He held revivals in saloons and churches. Though, as we'll come to find with Kidd, it's not always straightforward. It's hard to find the specifics of his studies, as no Moody records confirm his attendance. It was likely an honorary or self-styled, as no records can verify it. Some locals also claim that his limp didn't come from that cold night. They say that he was born with it, or it happened when he fell off a wagon as a young boy. But Kidd-Byrne's gratitude fueled this memorial, but his path isn't always clear. But let's move on to our next stop. Now, let's dive into one of the most interesting chapters in David Kidd-Byrne's life, the encounter that supposedly launched his $36 million inheritance claim. During his time in Chicago, Kidd-Byrne wandered into an underworld saloon during one of his evangelist outings. There he met Lucy Byrne, the runaway daughter of a wealthy Australian stockbroker named William S. Byrne from Brisbane. Lucy was in a desperate state, living as a prostitute and suffering from advanced TB, a fatal disease at the time. She had run away from her home several years earlier, severing all ties to her parents, and they had no idea where she was. Lucy pleaded with Kidd-Byrne to buy her a drink. Instead, he pulled out the Bible and read Psalm 23 aloud, which deeply moved her. She broke down, revealing her tragic story and begging for help to contact her father. Kidd-Byrne, seeing a divine opportunity, agreed. He facilitated the reunion by sending a cable to William in Brisbane, but the family was traveling in Europe, so the response was delayed for months. In the meantime, Lucy expressed her wish to enter a sanatorium in White Sulphur Springs, Florida, for treatment. Kidd-Byrne arranged her care, and the Byrnes eventually sent money. Then, with a cable from William, Kidd was informed that it is our legal intention to take the necessary steps to have you legally adopted as our son, on the condition that he had Byrne to his name. Kidd-Byrne did so, becoming David S. Kidd-Byrne, though tragically the family perished soon after. William and his wife in a sea wreck in 1908, Lucy from TB in the Florida Sanitarium on July 6, 1906, and their son, William, in the 1914 sinking of the Empress of Ireland. This left Kidd-Byrne as the alleged sole heir to a vast estate spanning 40 U.S. states and countries like Australia, Spain, and Argentina. He would go on to use the story to help raise money for court battles trying to secure his inheritance. But here is where it gets a little murky. No records of this Byrne family exist. No birth certificates, obituaries, or shipwreck reports match. Kidd-Byrne petitioned for probate in Florida in 1921, claiming $36 million, but received nothing. A 1926 judge report named him executor, but biographer Mr. White couldn't verify the papers, saying, "I cannot vouch for the authenticity." This led to a 1930 forgery arrest in Montreal, where he pleaded mental incompetence. Was the accountant real, or a con to fund his lifestyle? And memorials to Scriven? We may never know, but it fueled his life's mystery and drew thousands to his events. Now, let's head to Bewdley. Here we are at the Bewdley Union Cemetery. We're here to see if we can find this 14-foot marble column that David Kidd-Byrne erected. So let's head in there, see if we can find it. And this here was once a 14-foot column that David Kidd-Byrne had erected in the memory of not only Scriven, but Lucy and the other Byrnes who tragically all passed away. And I'll bring you for a closer look here, and we can see if we can make out any of the inscriptions. You can see here it has his initials, DSKB, Byrne. It's obviously very hard to make out, but this was all inscriptions about the hymns and the life of Lucy, the girl who he allegedly saved, and the money he was owed. Sadly, as you can see, it's fallen in complete disrepair. And the once grand statue that had lots of fanfare and audiences gathered here to see it unveiled, it's not the same anymore. And on this side here, again, it's hard to make out, but it says it was officially unveiled June 7th, 1925. Kidd's popularity peaked in the 1910s and 1920s. Preaching Scriven's hymn, he traveled with an orchestra as White as his secretary and violinist, Howard Boyles on violin as well, and the Smith brothers on instrumentals. He held revivals in saloons and churches. He funded memorials like this here to honor Scriven, raising, it said, $100,000 in donations over 20 years. Kidd-Byrne's later years saw his ministry fade. His 1930 Montreal forgery arrest led to him pleading mental incompetence and ended up dying in poverty in 1934. But we're almost on our journey here, so let's head to our final stop. Roadside marker that Kidd-Byrne erected in Scriven's honor. You can see it's just right tucked away here off the road. It'd be very hard to see for passerbys who, aren't aware of it here. And along the backside, there's a little bit more, and might be pretty hard to read. Not a lot of sunlight here, but down in the corner there, you can see it was erected by D.S.K. Byrne. Our last stop, this 1919 Highway 28 plaque near Kidd's Corner, marking Scriven's hymn composition in Port Hope. This roadside marker beside evergreens is a simple stone plaque with lyrics and details standing as an early tribute by Kidd-Byrne amid his rising claims. Here, in 1919, Mr. Byrne addressed the crowd. He declared that the suggestion that Scriven committed suicide was an injustice to the memory of a good man. He claimed that he was asked to sit beside Scriven's bedside, but fell asleep during his vigil. When he woke, he found the bed empty and Scriven had risen and taken a pail to get some water to drink. He goes on to say that Scriven was found kneeling on a plank with his face in shallow water and the pail empty beside him. Now, let's unravel the full story of David Samuel Kidd-Byrne, the man who called Joseph Scriven his spiritual father, but whose life took a turn into mystery, memorials, and murky rumors. Locals like Ed Dixon, who knew both in 1886, alleged that Kidd-Byrne killed Scriven. Dixon claimed that David Kidd was a devil, born a cripple. He was sitting up for Scriven, who was in bed sick, dragged him from the bed, took him outside, got him in water a foot deep. This, he claimed, was his first crime. Rumors spread that Kidd-Byrne was searching for money sent by Scriven's family, dragged him out during a vigil, and drowned him to cover that up. Kidd-Byrne's 1919 retelling of being there, falling asleep and waking up to an empty bed, fueled this conflicting story with his host, James Sackville's account of being alone. Dixon and others, like Christopher Wood, called Kidd a faker of the worst kind, assuming his lies, like the Byrne scam, extended to murder for gain. But the reality is, no evidence supports this. The 1886 coroner ruled the accident was from fever delirium. And what was Kidd's motive? Really, he had none. Scriven was his mentor, and it stemmed from the resentment towards Kidd's opportunism, exploiting Scriven's legacy for memorials and funds. This rumor persists in folklore, and it's a tragic shadow of Scriven's saintly life. Kidd-Byrne's story of rescue, faith, and fraud adds layers to Scriven's legacy, true or not. It shows how one man's influence can echo in unexpected ways. And if you enjoyed this journey, stick around till we have many more stories to tell.